Hello and welcome to Intoxicated Masculinity. If it is Halloween, then we are back for another 31 days of horror, 31 movies for 31 days in October. I know we haven't put out a video since the Oscars video this year. Just haven't gotten around to it. The channel is going to be, we are going to be doing more stuff on the channel at some point. I've got some plans, but for right now, I'll never want to miss this because I love horror movies, love Halloween, and yeah, I just like doing this. So this year has kind of been an interesting year. I feel like in previous years I've had maybe more high highs and more low lows, whereas this year's kind of been a lot of the films kind of right around the middle, just kind of hovering around the middle there. So without further ado, we will get started. So the first movie that I watched was Oregon Trail. Get it? Because it sounds like Oregon Trail, but it's Oregon Trail. It was fine. It's basically a movie about a girl whose family gets killed, and so she goes after the people that killed her family, and it's revenge. It's just kind of, it almost feels a little half-hearted sometimes. I don't think it did anything terrible, but I didn't really get it. I mean, not that I didn't get it. I just didn't connect with me really in any way. It's a fine movie, I think, but I don't think you're going to remember it really at all after it happens. And so I'm going to stop talking about it now. Next up is Megan 2.0. See, this movie got quite the drubbing from critics. I don't really understand why. I mean, I guess, so the one thing about Megan 2.0 that's kind of different is it's sort of a different genre. It's not really a horror movie exactly. I mean, we're putting it here, so we're going to call it a horror movie. And I think it is. There's horrible things happen in it. But it's definitely more like kind of action, sci-fi, comedy kind of a movie. And honestly, it kind of worked for me. I don't know. I thought it was pretty entertaining. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I would watch the unrated version. I don't know how much difference there is from the theatrical trailer or from the theatrical version, but I watched the unrated version. I had a lot of fun with it. It's Megan doing Megan-y things, and I like that they kind of they bring Megan into the fold as the sort of good character or one of the good characters in the movie. Yeah, I thought it was fun. I don't know. I don't understand why people sort of hated it so much. I guess one of the things that us horror fans can do is kind of get a little gatekeepy, and so if something isn't exactly what we picture horror to be, then we sort of get mad at it. I don't know. I like this one. I thought it was fun. I think it's worth a watch, especially if you like sort of action, sci-fi, comedy type stuff. I just thought it worked. Next up, I'm going to talk about both of these back to back. I watched Becky and Wrath of Becky, and I like these movies. I think the main character works really well together. I do have a complaint that I'm going to get to, and I feel like the Wrath of Becky is definitely the lesser of the two. They kind of, because the first one, you know, there's a reason why they're there, why the bad guys are at the place. For the second one, they really kind of have to be a little convoluted to get Becky sort of in connection to the bad guys. I mean, they do it and it kind of works, but it also kind of doesn't work. But I think she's really good. I think the gore's really good. I haven't been giving my ratings, I guess. I gave the first one an A-, and the second one I think a B-, or B, excuse me. By the way, Megan 2.0 I gave a B, and then Oregon Trail I gave a C. But the one thing I wanted to comment, it's unfortunately something kind of negative, although I did very much like this, especially the first one. I think the first one's a very solid film. I think maybe Kevin James' best performance, which I don't know if that's a super high bar, but I thought he was he's playing a neo-Nazi. He's playing like a really, really despicable person, and sort of unrepentantly despicable person. And I think he does a pretty good job at it. I think he's believable. The one thing that they do in both movies, and it's something that bothers me a lot. There's a thing that sort of screenwriters will do, and it's kind of like I think just kind of a lazy trick, is if you want to show that a guy is a bad guy, you will either have him sexually assault somebody or hurt a dog. And here, not going to spoil too much, but there is some abuse of animals in both of these movies. I don't think it adds anything, and I don't know why they did it. I think especially in the first one with Kevin James, like all the other stuff that Kevin James does is ample evidence that he's a despicable human being in this movie. And I feel like hurting a dog is just like, I've got a dog. I'm very sensitive to stuff like that. There's another movie that we'll talk about very soon that involves a dog, and they didn't have to abuse it. And I think that they didn't need to do it here. So I'm sorry to talk about the one negative thing about the two Becky movies. Overall, I thought they were actually pretty good. I enjoyed them a lot. Again, first one definitely over top of the second one, but the second was fun too in a lot of ways. Okay, so the next one is Possession. So for lack of a better, I gave Possession an A-, and I don't know why. I don't know what this movie is. I don't understand any of it. It's very unique. It's Sam Neill. Just a second. Sam Neill and Isabel Adjani. I think we're just going to read the IMDb description. A woman starts exhibiting increasingly disturbing behavior after asking her husband for a divorce. Suspicions of infidelity soon give way to something much more sinister. Yeah, I guess that's right. It's weird to see a description that says something and be like, that's right, and also I don't know, like that's totally not it. It's I don't know how to describe the movie. You should watch it. You should definitely watch it. It's well made. It is oh god, Andrzej Zolowski. Apologize for my mispronunciations. It is a trip. It is a very bizarre movie, and I think a movie like this that I'm not even sure if I liked it exactly. But it's interesting and it makes me think, and I think that that's really all you can expect from, or about the best you can get out of a movie. Something that makes you think a little bit. So while I can't tell you really anything about the movie, other than the fact that all the actors are, at 11, the entire movie, you should check it out. You should check it out. Yeah, it's something. This is an interesting comparison. So we go from Possession, an incredibly unique movie, which is very interesting, to Night of the Reaper, a movie that I feel like I had already forgotten most of, like immediately after I watched it. This is actually probably pretty emblematic of what a lot of my experience was throughout this month. Is there's just a lot of movies that just kind of took something else that had already been done and just kind of did it again. And it's serviceable. I don't think it's a bad movie. What did I give it? I gave it a C-. I don't hate it. I don't know why it is, because it doesn't really do anything. It's just kind of I can read the IMDb page again. I'm not going to do this for every movie, but college student Dina visits home and is roped into babysitting the local sheriff. Babysitting the local sheriff is mailed a piece of evidence and is led on a scavenger hunt to reveal the killer of another babysitter. Yeah, it's just kind of a screamy kind of like this is like Kevin Williamson on Decaf, I guess. Fine. If you're up late at night and you want to watch a horror movie you don't have to pay too much attention to and you're not going to hate, Night of the Reaper is probably going to scratch that itch. But you're not going to have much memory of it, much after that. Yeah. I really don't have much to say about that movie. Next is Hell of a Summer. Hell of a Summer is, I believe, the directorial debut of Finn Wolfhard of Stranger Things fame. We'll see more Finn Wolfhard when they finally finish Stranger Things. A show that I am not particularly excited about. I guess this was a Neon pickup. Neon has picked up a bunch of them. We're actually going to see another one, I believe. Yes, we're talking about another Neon pickup towards the end. This is it's sort of a camp slasher flick. but it's just very going through the motions. I didn't really think much about it. It's just, it was a little frustrating. Yeah, I mean, I take a little note for each one of the movies to remind myself of what I watched. And for Hell of a Summer, the only note I have is decent camp slasher, not very memorable, and I gave it a C plus. And that feels just about right. Again, not bad, I think, but just not memorable and not really doing anything that we haven't seen many times before. Going from something that we've seen many times before to something we've only really seen once before, and that is Good Boy. As I said before, I am a huge dog lover, and this is about the titular Good Boy. This movie's incredibly unique. I really liked it. I thought it's kind of amazing. It's not. Well, first of all, I'll say this. Pause for spoilers. It is not really a spoiler for what happens in the movie, but just pause here, fast forward 5 or 10 seconds. The dog does not die. If the dog had died, I would not have given it this kind of a rating. Okay, end of spoilers. No, just the way it's shot is really unique. The dog is not an actor dog; it's just their dog. And they filmed this, I think, over the course of several years to get all these shots just right. I think it's kind of amazing. I really thought it was great. And I had a terrible theater experience for this movie. There was a couple that was sitting next to me, a younger couple, and they would not shut the fuck up for the entire movie. I complained several times. I told them to be quiet. And finally, they ended up leaving, thank God. And I was able to see the end of the movie. But no, really cool idea for a movie. Definitely the freshest thing that I've seen this month, maybe in a little while. I didn't review it for this because I watched a while ago, but Bring Her Back was probably my favorite horror movie this year. And I think maybe this is probably not quite as good as Bring Her Back, but at this point, they're both great movies. And, and ultimately, like, kind of what's going on in the movie isn't immediately obvious. And I think it's really interesting. Yeah, great movie. Good Boy is in fact a good boy, and I appreciate him very much. Next. Okay, this movie I found to be very frustrating. So The Monkey. This is an adaptation of Stephen King's short story, directed by Oz Perkins. I believe... first of all, Osgood Perkins is the son of Anthony Perkins of Psycho fame, so he definitely has horror in his blood. He has a really interesting sort of filmography as a director. So he directed The Blackcoat's Daughter, which is not a movie that I actually love, but I do think it's interesting. I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, sort of along the same lines. I didn't love it, but I do think it's really interesting. Gretel and Hansel was very good. Longlegs was very good. And then we get to The Monkey. So I don't think The Monkey is bad. I think it's actually a good movie. Like, I gave it what did I give it? Oh, by the way, Good Boy got an A. The Monkey I gave a B. This could have very easily gotten a much higher rating for me. So the thing with The Monkey is it's kind of a comedy, and it's kind of a horror movie, but the problem is it doesn't seem to sort of be able to commit to one of them. And I think like if you take something like that's really successful, like Shaun of the Dead, for example. Shaun of the Dead is very much, it can be considered a horror movie, but its first priority is comedy. It is trying to be funny, and that is sort of its primary goal. And then it sort of surrounds that with a bunch of horror elements, and because of that, it's able to be very successful in that goal. Whereas this one, like, some of the stuff in there is really genuinely pretty funny and pretty well done. The plot doesn't really make any sense, which isn't necessarily the worst thing on earth. I mean, there's a lot of movies that have plots that are a little thin. It doesn't bother me. But I think what bothered me the most about The Monkey... And again, there's a lot of stuff there that I did like. I gave it a B, so I think it's a good movie, and I would suggest you watch it. But it feels like it could have been a lot better in my book. because the tone was just so strange. It's like sometimes they want it to be a serious horror movie, and sometimes they want it to be kind of, almost kind of a goofball comedy, and the two just can't really coexist in a way. Yeah. And yeah, I said in my note, it's best when it's leaning into the humor, and I do think the humor was good. There's a scene. Osgood Perkins has a scene in it where he's very funny. He's playing this sort of kind of shitty uncle who's going to have to take the kids, and he's very good. It's a very funny scene. And I think the horror doesn't really work that well in this one. So, unfortunately. Next up, Drive Back. This is going to kind of go along the same lines of some. I think it's better than some of the other movies. Night of the Reaper, and Hell of a Summer, and Oregon Trail. I think Drive Back is definitely worth your time. But I think ultimately it again is kind of doing a lot of the things that we've seen other movies do, and maybe not doing them quite as well. So yeah, just a little disappointing, I guess. But it's still a good movie, I think. I think definitely worth watching. I enjoyed it. I think it's kind of got some fun little twists and whatever. Just doesn't feel as fresh as I think it probably should have felt. But again, worth your time. Next up, found footage, The Making of the Patterson Project. If you look this movie up, make sure to type in the whole title, because there are a bunch of found footage things. I found this movie to be actually quite charming. It's the concept is not anything groundbreaking at all. Essentially, it's the footage of a bunch of people making a low-budget horror movie about a Bigfoot. And it's sort of again, comedy. This sort of, the monkey probably could have taken notes on this. The comedy is very much front and center in this movie. And I think, again, that's what the monkey probably should have done. Not really doing anything particularly innovative, but it does feel kind of fresh. I like that the characters kind of feel real to me. Like they don't kind of feel, I don't know, made up or fake or whatever. So I enjoyed it quite a bit. I thought it was a lot of fun. A minus, by the way, for that movie. I always forget to tell you the rating. Somewhere Quiet. Oh God, this movie. Follows a woman as she readjusts to normalcy after a kidnapping. Her sense of reality begins to deteriorate when she travels to her husband's family compound. Man, this one just didn't leave a mark on me at all. I rated it as a B minus. Good, but seems muddled. The themes are intriguing, but never seems to fully resolve. Yeah, I think that's probably about right. I gave it a B minus. That's definitely a recommend. It's funny, sometimes on these ratings I want to go back through and change. In fact, the next one I'm going to change because I can do that. I have the power. Yeah, so it's kind of like she was kidnapped and then she's at this thing and then I don't know. It just doesn't really. I mean, it's fine, but it doesn't. I don't know. Didn't leave a mark, like I said. One that I did remember a lot, especially going back to it, was Mr. Crockett. This is a Hulu original. This movie is not amazing, but I had a lot of fun with it. It's one of those things. It's sometimes better to be interesting than good, even. And it is a good movie. I gave it a B plus. I originally gave it a B minus, and looking back on it, I actually had a lot of fun with this movie. I thought it was just kind of a. I don't know. It's a horror movie that's just having fun. So this is one where the horror elements are probably more front and center than the comedy elements, but I feel like they're still balanced. Like, it is kind of a horror movie first. I think the guy playing Mr. Crockett is just kind of a really goofy sort of a guy. I don't know. This movie worked for me. It's essentially a movie about a haunted kids television show host, essentially. And it's weird, and I thought quite funny and quite charming. So I like that quite a bit. On to a movie. I forgot. Next up is actually Control Freak. This is Kelly Marie Tran. So again, this is a theme in a lot of the movies that I watched this month. Um, it's about an influencer who haunted things happen. And again, it just seems like a lot of the things that I've seen in a lot of other horror movies just kind of done again, and maybe just a little tinny. I gave it a B, which is funny. I sound more. I guess I sound more negative on it than I really am. I do think it's a good movie. It's worth a watch, but it's just kind of the. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you rate the movie just as a movie, is it a good movie or a bad movie? Yeah, I think it's a pretty decent horror movie. But if you sort of put it in the context of what's all going on in the genre and everything right now, because I think we're living in a great time for horror movies. There's a lot of really new and interesting and innovative stuff coming out. Again, Bring Her Back, Weapons, Sinners. This has been a real solid year for horror. And when I see something like this, that's perfectly serviceable, but just kind of doesn't feel like it's, breaking any fresh ground or really doing much with the genre. I just feel like, yes, it was good, but who gives a shit, basically. Now on from a movie that I didn't have strong opinions about to a movie that I had very strong opinions about, which is you just can't get through a horror month without watching something with Amityville on it. So this particular one is Amityville Where the Echo Lives. This one I definitely want to read the IMDb description because I'm curious what it says. Okay, when paranormal investigator Heather West receives a call from a terrified woman who claims her house is inhabited by a ghost, she discovers the building has a horrifying history. Okay, so that is technically true in what happens in the movie. But it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So my note on here, so it's this one's getting a D minus for me, and I put in my note it's only getting a D because the ways in which it is terrible are interesting, and it is. So almost the entire movie is ADR'd. For those who don't know, that means basically all the audio was recorded afterwards and then put back into the film, which they do in good films sometimes when you have to, but you have to be really careful because ADR is so obvious. Because if you and I are having a conversation in a bar, our voices sound different based on the echo, based on all the other things that are sort of going on. And if you ADR something in, it's very obvious that voice is not coming from two guys sitting in a bar. There is one scene that was not ADR'd, and it's so bizarre because you can't even understand it. The audio in that scene sort of literally just sounds like you put an old tape recorder on the ground where the actors are giving their dialogue. It sounds horrible. Again, the movie doesn't really make any sense. Things just kind of seem to happen. One of the strangest things, too, about it is I almost thought it was a Spanish language film at first because it sounded like dubbing almost, but it was an ADR. I don't know. Very strange, very bad movie. Do not watch Amityville Where the Echo Lives. Long. It's the funny thing about movies like this. It's an hour and 29 minutes, but it feels easily 3 to 5 times longer than that. Yeah, just a real bad movie. Next, we can't have a year without a VHS film. So this year is VHS Halloween. By the way, one of the most irritating things about the VHS franchise, and I wish they hadn't have done this, the movie is spelled V/H/S. That is incredibly frustrating because if you just type in VHS to IMDb, and just so you know, whenever I'm doing these videos, I always bring up all the movies on IMDb so I can look up anything that I might need to look at before I talk to you about it. If you just type in VHS, it won't bring it up. You have to type V/H/S, and I find that incredibly annoying. That being said, I think this is maybe my favorite VHS movie. I didn't really, because VHS is it is a formula. I don't even know how many VHS movies there are now. There's got to be 6 or 7 of them, I think, something like that. And the formula basically is there's a good one, there's like some weird ones, and there's a bad one or two. And so like I feel like generally speaking on a VHS movie, the movie VHS, not a VHS tape movie, you'll get at least one solid segment, and you'll get like at least two probably bad segments. I didn't hate any of these. I really didn't hate any of these. I think they're all at least pretty decent, and in VHS adjusted standards, that's a win. So I ended up giving this a B plus, which is yeah, it was good. Yeah, I think probably my favorite VHS movie, which who knew? Usually they don't get good at part 7. Next, another kind of pleasant surprise for me, Dangerous Animals. I'm not a Jai Courtney fan. He was sort of in that early 2010s sort of period where you had a bunch of actors that were all that Hollywood was kind of trying to push on us as an audiences, and they kind of just never really worked. And I think part of the problem is I think originally Jai Courtney was just miscast in a lot of things. I think that he can play a villain and a goofball, but I think he's not really a leading man type. And I think that's what they were kind of pushing him as is your kind of leading man type person. And I think that's just not his bag. It just, because in this one, Jai Courtney is playing the villain. And I think he's great. Like, he's really good. He's kind of, I think what I like about his villain turn in this is he's a really uncomplicated villain. He's just a bad guy. And that's it. There's not really any further explanation. You don't need to get into it any deeper than that. He's just a real globby, greasy, bad guy. And very, very sort of passionately so. And I thought it was quite good. Yeah, Dangerous Animals, I give it a B plus. And it's always interesting how I watch these. I never have a specific order that I'm going to watch these movies in. They just kind of come up in whatever order I watch them. And to go from a movie like Dangerous Animals, where I was expecting to not particularly like it, and like, oh, it's Jai Courtney, who cares? Oh, by the way, the other thing about Dangerous Animals, I kind of think the female lead's a little kind of there. I didn't care for her performance that much. The rest of the movie is very good though. But to another movie that when I saw the cast and everything, I was kind of excited, and that is the movie Borderline, starring Ray Nicholson of the loins of Jack Nicholson, and Samara Weaving. Samara Weaving, I'm a huge fan of. She's probably, one of the top 5 of most important horror actresses working today. It'd be an interesting video, but yeah, she's definitely there, and I really was excited to see this movie, and I thought it was awful. I thought this movie, I wanted to turn it off. There is few things more frustrating than a movie that is dumb that thinks it's smart, and that is Borderline. Yeah, I gave it a D minus. I gave it a D minus basically. In my note, I said because of Samara Weaving and it was in focus. Well, I'll just read my full note. One of the most basically and fundamentally stupid movies I've ever seen. It's made more frustrating by how smart it seems to think it is. And it does seem to think it thinks it's being clever, and it's just not. Nothing makes any sense in this movie. None of it ever comes close to making any sense. The performances are weird, but not interesting weird, just kind of annoying weird. I really, really didn't like this movie. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what this movie was supposed to be, but it was very, very bad. This was, I think this was the worst movie I saw this month. The other D movie that we already talked about was Amityville, Where the Echo Lives. And this is one of those things, well, I will freely admit that I am biased. If I have two movies and one of them has a budget and one of them doesn't have a budget, I'm going to be more critical of the one with the budget, because I've seen what it is like for, independent filmmakers and filmmakers that don't have a lot of money, and how hard it is to get movies made. So there's another movie we're going to talk about in a little bit that I rated a little bit higher than this. But that movie had no budget. This movie had a budget. I mean, this movie clearly had some money. There was money put behind this, and they came out with this, and it's dreadful. It's awful. Yeah, man, borderline just hated it, and again wanted to love it, really did. I love Samara Weaving. I don't know what happened. Bad movie. Next is Ash. So Ash, I gave a B to. Ash is basically like a new space horror. I don't think it hits it on all cylinders. I think it has a few flaws, but overall, I think they really nailed the sort of atmosphere. I mean, this is sort of Event Horizon on slightly lower budget. But I think they use the budget really well. I think the film has a really great like style. The lighting is really cool. Yeah, I mean it's not perfect. Again, some flaws, but overall, I thought it was very successful at what they were trying to do, and I enjoyed it. I would recommend it. Ash, scratch your space horror itch. Okay, next up and nominated for next to VHS. Most pain in the ass movie to look up on the internet or on IMDb, and that is Culture Shock, a movie I did like, by the way, and I'll get into that in a minute. But so technically, this doesn't qualify. I do movies for this, and I don't do shows. There was actually a couple shows I almost did, but I kind of maintained my rule of just doing movies. The thing is, I think it does count. So this comes from the series called Into the Dark. Into the Dark is technically a television show, but each episode is a full-length movie. This is an hour and 31 minutes. It is an anthology series, but it's just weird because it's a movie, but it's made as part of a TV show. And so when you want to look up Culture Shock, you won't be able to find it. You have to actually look up Into the Dark, then go to the episodes list, and then find it. I liked it. This is another one of those ones where I probably am going to sound more negative than I actually am because I did enjoy the movie. I thought it was good. I think it's one of those things where when I see the movie has promise, and then doesn't sort of quite live up to that promise, it's a little disappointing. Even though it's good, and it's better than a lot of the other movies that I've maybe not been, like if I go back to something like, Night of the Reaper, for example, or Hell of a Summer. Like, I wasn't all that negative on those movies, but I just don't have anything to say about them because I find them to be kind of empty and just kind of formulaic. Whereas Culture Shock, I think, actually is doing some really interesting stuff, and I think in the end, it just isn't quite as... It doesn't end quite as cleverly as I think it probably could have. I think they could have rewritten the ending to just make it a little bit more interesting. But overall, I think it's pretty good. I enjoy the performances. It's good to see Barbara Crampton. Actually, we met Barbara Crampton at Scarefest down in Lexington, Kentucky, a couple weeks ago. She's very, very nice, and it's just always nice to see Barbara Crampton and things. So, and the rest of the movie's good. It's just I just feel like they could have stuck the ending a little bit better, and I would have been a little more positive on it. But I give that one a B-. Next. This isn't right. We're going to change Culture Shock to a B, and the next movie we're going to change to a B- because Culture Shock was better than that. By the way, just a note on rankings. The ratings and rankings I do for these movies is all the way I feel in the moment and the way I feel now. These are not be-all, end-all. Like, nobody should think that these ratings are somehow, authoritative or anything like that. It's the way I feel about a movie in the moment. And, that's really the only thing you can do. So the next one is Hellboy the Crooked Man. So this is probably what Hellboy should have done really after Ron Perlman left. But then they did sort of the remake thing with Harbor. And this is the one that came after that. And the thing that's interesting about it is this is basically like the equivalent of like a 2-issue arc in a Hellboy comic. And so it's just kind of a very simple little story that they're telling. I think it is... How long did this one run? Hour and 39 minutes. That sounds about right. The star is Jack Kesey. I think a few things hold it back a little bit. I give it a... I'm like I said, I switched to a B-. I think it's because I think Culture Shock's a little better than this. I think it's held back. First of all, Jack Kesey, I don't know if he did this or if the director told him to do this, but he's very much doing his Ron Perlman impersonation, and I think that was kind of a mistake because it just kind of feels like, it's like Ron Perlman, but not Ron Perlman. And I think it probably would have been better if he would have kind of just made it his. But overall, it's I think it's a good thing to do with Hellboy because I think you could do movies like this every few years. Just do a little Hellboy movie where he's investigating some paranormal event. In other words, as opposed to what they did with the Hellboy movies, where each one is, oh my god, the world's about to end. And the problem is you can't do the world's about to end all the time because it just gets kind of old. And I think this would have been a good direction. Again, I don't think it's as compelling as it could be. But I mean, given the stuff that I was watching this week or this month, it's a good, solid little horror story. You get to see some Hellboy. Again, I think that Jack Kesey, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. I wish he would have kind of not done the Ron Perlman, which he kind of does in the movie, and I feel like that kind of distracts you. It's just sort of like illustrates how he's not Ron Perlman, and he doesn't have to be Ron Perlman. He can be just Jack Kesey and just do his own thing, if that is how you pronounce his name. But fun and a good direction, I think, for the movie or for the franchise. Bloody Axe Wound. Okay, this movie I gave a C+ to. This really carries on the theme of this month. Of it's a fun concept. I just don't know if it really sort of measures up. I mean, it's kind of like some movies that I've liked a lot better, but not quite there. So, like, the two movies that spring to mind sort of immediately are Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon, which is one of my favorite horror movies, and Creep, another one of my favorite horror movies. And it's sort of like, it's kind of like those two movies kind of had a baby, but the baby wasn't as good as either of its parents. It's still good. I think it's fresher than a lot of the stuff I've seen. But it just doesn't quite have the life in it that I feel like it kind of should have. I think I would still recommend it, though. In fact, I gave that a C+. I'm going to change that. I think I'm going to go B-, because I did enjoy the characters, and I do enjoy it. It's just kind of, it's one of the things I was saying about one of the previous movies where it's kind of like I have more to say about this than I do movies that are worse, and I end up sounding like I'm negative on it, but what I really am is like I'm just a tiny bit disappointed. Like, not hugely disappointed, but a tiny bit disappointed. But overall, I think it's a pretty fun movie. But again, I mean, if you haven't seen Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon or Creep, then go watch them because they're amazing films. But yeah, we're going to increase that to a B-. All right. Next up, we have The Boy from Below. So there is. So I'm gonna fast forward to it. The movie I actually watched last, because I think these two movies I want to talk about next to each other. So The Boy from Below and Natty Knox. There is a thing on the cons. There's a lot of horror actors and actresses that are on the con circuit that have sort of gotten back into doing kind of low budget cinema. By the way, I think that's a great thing. So The Boy from Below has Dee Wallace and Felissa Rose. There's a bunch of other people, but those are kind of the names you know. And Natty Knox has Bill Moseley and Danielle Harris and Robert Englund. Anybody else? There's probably a few more people, but those are kind of the big ones there. And I rated these very differently. So The Boy from Below I gave a C+, and Natty Knox I gave a D+. The reason why is kind of hard to describe. So The Boy from Below is very, very low budget film. Very low budget film. But overall, I think the only thing I can say is that The Boy from Below feels like it has heart and Natty Knox doesn't. And I know that's not very descriptive. The Boy from Below is a slasher flick. Natty Knox is kind of more... I guess it's kind of a slasher flick too. It feels a little different, but ultimately, yeah, The Boy from Below just feels like it has more heart. It just does. I mean, again, these are both very low budget flicks, And so I'm not trying to judge them too harshly, because I know that it's very difficult to make films when you have, very little or no money. But yeah, so between The Boy from Below and Natty Knox, The Boy from Below I'm going to give a C plus, and Natty Knox is a D plus. Um, yeah, what I said about Natty Knox, kind of annoying and nonsensical. Uh, a bunch of old horror icons brought back for something that isn't worth their time, and it's true. I feel bad saying that a little bit, because I mean, all these people. I mean, Felissa Rose. We got to meet Felissa Rose actually at Scarefest too. She is a firecracker of a personality. I think she's got more personality in her little finger than most of us have in our whole bodies. If you ever get a chance to meet her, I would highly recommend it. Daniel Harris is always great. Robert Englund he's Robert Englund. What can you say? Bill Moseley, I didn't like Bill Moseley in the movie. I really didn't. I thought it just came off as so, like, I don't know, kind of, what's the right word? Kind of lifeless, and just like, I am the bad guy because the script says I'm the bad guy, and I really didn't like it. I really didn't like that movie at all. Not the worst movie I watched this month, but definitely not the best either. Okay, so now we're going to talk about probably the most important film that I watched this month. Well, God knows what that really means. And that is Chris Stuckman's Shelby Oaks, fellow YouTuber with, about equal reach. So Shelby Oaks is the one that he made on his own. It is a it starts off as a mockumentary / found footage kind of thing, and then it becomes a regular movie. I was really, really torn on this. I ended up giving it a B plus, and I gave it a B plus because I think the stuff that is good is quite good. I think the cinematography, I think the performances are very good. There were some pretty cool jump scares, and I think that stuff worked. But ultimately, it sort of felt like he's trying to pack it. It sort of reminds me, or makes me think of, like, if you were just going to make one movie ever, you'd want to put everything you want to put into any movie you're ever going to make in there. And that's sort of what Shelby Oaks feels like. It kind of feels like they're trying to put too much stuff in there, and it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit all the stuff. There's too much stuff for it to fit. And so it kind of feels uneven. I think the shift from going from a mockumentary into a standard film is quite jarring and doesn't feel natural. I am interested to see what he does after this. And he definitely will have my ticket money for his next movie, because I think this does show promise, but ultimately it does just kind of feel like there's a lot of things here that don't really work. And I think that's a shame. I think one of the things, for example, that I sort of came away from the movie, the main character is the woman whose sister disappeared, and she's married in it, but her husband is like they're together, but they're kind of not together, and it's a very strange relationship. And so ultimately, she really never has hardly anybody to talk to. And in films like this, people talking to people are how you sort of let the audience in on things. And so at times she kind of just is going places, and it kind of feels like, why is she doing this? And it doesn't feel natural. This, by the way, the other big pickup for Neon. Mike Flanagan, I guess, executive produces as well. Ultimately, I'm going to say it's good. It's good with, maybe some caveats. Look forward to see what he's going to do next. But yeah, it just didn't 100% work for me, and I feel like it's kind of a little overstuffed in places, and kind of bare in others. It's just kind of an oddly paced sort of film. Vicious. This is the Dakota Fanning. This is another one where it's kind of tries to be an innovative concept, although maybe not as innovative as it thinks it is. Dakota Fanning's character gets a box brought to her, and horrible things happen. Again, not memorable. It's just kind of it's there. It's decent. But but didn't stick for me. I don't know. It's fine. A lot of the stuff didn't seem to make a ton of sense exactly. I don't know. Not bad. I gave it a C plus. Something I did not give a C plus to, and I am very late to the party on this, but such is life. Flatliners, the 2017 remake. So I gave this a D plus, and that actually feels too nice. We're gonna give that a D. We're gonna decrease Flatliners 2017 down to a D. It feels like they were going to do a Flatliners remake, and they were just like, well, we can't do exactly like Flatliners, so let's just randomly change a few things and get actors that just could not seem more bored with the movie they're in. Really nothing about this movie works for me at all. It's funny, I'm talking myself down to an F. I don't think I can give it an F. I mean, it's got Elliot Page in it. Good actor, but it's got Diego Luna in it. Diego Luna is, I presume, was on Valium throughout the making of the movie. One of the more confusing things, they bring in Kiefer Sutherland as a professor at the medical school, but he's playing a totally different character. So why bother bringing Kiefer Sutherland in if you're not going to have him be the character he was in the other movie? Why not connect them? Why not do something? I mean, ultimately, what they try to do, and maybe the one thing I would give it as far as the plot of the movie is they do try to change things, and it is sort of more because we recently watched the original Flatliners, which is a great movie. The original Flatliners isn't a horror movie. I mean, it really, really isn't. I mean, you watch it and it's at best like maybe a psychological thriller, but it's definitely not horror. And you get the impression with this movie, they're like, okay, let's do Flatliners, but let's make it at least a little bit more of a horror film. And I think that's a good idea, but not like this. Yeah, my note is just a total waste. No new ideas, poor execution, no reason to exist. Performances from even the good cast members are spotty at best. And it looks cheap. It did look cheap. The special effects look very cheap. I mean, the special effects kind of look like they came from maybe 10 years before the movie was actually made. And I'm an Andor fan. Diego Luna is asleep in this movie. I mean, I'm surprised his eyes are even open. It's nothing. God, is this the worst movie? Because I rated Amityville Where the Echo Lives as a D-, and this is a D. Do I change that? Do I give it a D-? No, I think I'm going to leave it as a D. So it is not the worst movie, just barely, is not the worst movie that I saw this month. Next, speaking of remakes, we watched, with my wife, I watched The Hand That Rocks the Cradle remake that just came out this month. And I thought it was pretty good. I think the one problem I gave it a B-, and I think that's probably about right. The one problem is, and by the way, it's Micah Monroe and Mary Elizabeth Winstead. One of the things that sort of surprised me, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, I'm sort of familiar with her from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and 10 Cloverfield Lane and other stuff like that. And in this, she's playing like a very adult woman, because she is an adult woman. But it's interesting how just changing kind of her hair and her wardrobe, and I literally didn't realize it was Mary Elizabeth Winstead for the first 20 or 30 minutes of the movie. And she's very good. Mike and Monroe's very good. They have very good tension. I think that ultimately the thing that drags this movie down is its attempt to be more clever than it should probably try to be. You start to get towards the end of the movie, and things keep being kind of revealed, and eventually you kind of wish things would stop being revealed because it just kind of seems like you're just trying to reveal things. I don't know. It gets a little frustrating at the end, but overall, I think the performance is quite good. I enjoyed it. It's got Martin Starr in it. I like seeing him in things. Yeah. So aside from a little quibbles I'd have with the script, I think it's pretty good. Next up, oh my goodness. So I essentially grew up watching direct-to-video horror movies in the late '80s and early '90s, and my favorite film company was Full Moon Pictures, Full Moon Features. They've changed their name a bunch of times. And one of my favorites was the Subspecies films. I've watched all of them. I watched all of them back in the day. I hadn't seen them recently, but when we went to Scarefest, I'm going to say Anders Hove. That is not actually how his name is pronounced, but I can't pronounce his name. He's a very, very nice Dutch man, and I cannot pronounce his name to save my life. So I apologize, and it was great talking to you if he's watching this. So he and Ted Nicolau and Denise Duff were all at Scarefest. I got to talk to them. If Ted Nicolau was watching this, thank you so much for listening to me. We went to the VIP party after the show, and I talked his ear off, and he was very, very gracious, and I appreciated him very much. And so Charles Band, the founder of Full Moon, recently got enough money together to make several sequels to some of his old movies. And so I watched Blood Rise Subspecies 5, which is made something like 25 years after the fourth one was made. And it's funny because I feel like this movie has everything stacked against it, and I still really liked it. Now, I am nostalgic for these movies, so take my bias with a grain of salt. This movie had, I think, about the same budget as the last one. Ted can correct me if I'm wrong about that. But it's one of those things, when you have the same budget 25 years later, you really don't have the same budget because, it's inflation. So, I mean, essentially it has a lower budget than the previous films did. It is 25 years later. Everybody's a little bit older. This is a prequel. I hate prequels. And yet, I really like this movie. I think Anders is great in it. I think Denise Duff is great in it. I thought it was just a lot of fun. I think I think Ted knows how to use a budget to its fullest extent. For example, I think it was talking about Flatliners looking cheap. Just talking about Flatliners looking cheap. If you told me these two movies had the same budget, I would find it believable. And they very much do not have the same budget. It's basically going back to Radu Vladislas before he became a vampire, how he became, kind of before he became a vampire, before he embraced his vampireness. Just a fun way to kind of play around with it. They can bring back Denise Duff without having to explain what happened in the last movie or anything like that. And meeting all three of them at Scarefest was great. I had a blast, and So take my nostalgia into account when we talk about this. But yeah, I gave it a B+. You might not give it a B+, but that's what I gave it. All right, next. So this is a Tubi original, which one of these days we are going to do a video and we're going to talk about streaming services, because I think streaming services are so interesting with what streaming service is the best at horror. Tubi would be very high on that list because you can watch so many things on Tubi. Plus it's got a great little Tubi thing that pops up at the beginning of the movies. Glamping was not great. I don't think it's bad exactly, but just kind of falls into that. It's an influencer who's trying to climb the ranks of the influencers, and she goes to a cabin with her friends, and I mean, who gives a shit really? Not bad. It's just very. You're gonna forget it in 10 minutes. I watched this movie 2 days ago, and I've already brain dumped almost the entire thing. And finally, technically Natty Knox was actually the last movie I watched, but I switched around the order a little bit. St. Clair. So this is apparently based on a book series, which is Claire at 16. Claire by Dawn Roth. So it's essentially about a girl who kills bad people. Think of like teenage Dexter, basically. Um, they in the movie they fast forwarded to where she's in college, um, and this movie isn't doing anything particularly new or interesting, but I do feel like it has a certain charm to it. I am not a particular fan of Bella Thorne, but I think she does a pretty good job in this one. I think she's got a pretty decent screen presence. Um, it's got Ryan Phillippe and Rebecca De Mornay in supporting roles, which was kind of cool. Frank Whaley is playing Bob the Mailman. He's maybe the funniest character in the whole movie. Yeah, it's just kind of a fun, like, imagine Dexter, but a college girl. And I don't know. I feel like its heart is in the right place. Um, yeah, I gave that one a B minus, which I think seems about right. Actually, no, we're changing on the fly again because we're flexible. I'm gonna give it a B. Actually, I'm gonna upgrade that just a little bit because I think sometimes when I hear people talking about movies, like they walk out of a movie and they say I loved it or I hated it, and I understand that sometimes a movie has that sort of visceral impact on you where you're just like, this was bullshit, or this is awesome. But I would say most of the time when I watch a movie, I need to rattle it around in my brain for at least a little bit before I can figure out what I think about it. And so movies like St. Clair, I remember, and I remember fondly. So that must mean it was a good movie, or at least good-ish anyway. All right. Oh, and one other thing, I watched this. I think I'd already seen this, but it wasn't on my list anywhere. I also watched Spree, which was quite good. It's the kid from Stranger Things. Which one? Steve from Stranger Things. And he is a serial killer who drives Uber, and it's pretty sharp. It's a pretty sharp movie. I'd recommend watching it. It's very chaotic in a very kind of fun way. So there's one bonus movie. And that is all the horror movies that I watched in October. Overall, there was some really good ones. Again, Spree, whether or not I count that or not, so I think I already saw it, was very good. Good Boy was very good. Becky was very good. Possession was something that you should watch. I don't know if, again, I gave it an A minus, and I don't even know if I like the movie. But it's definitely something you should watch. And yeah, mostly good movies, I think. Shelby Oaks, again, probably the one people are talking about the most, given the fact that it's a fellow YouTuber with exactly the same reach. And that movie I think has a lot of good stuff to it, but just didn't quite stick it, and I think it's a little overstuffed and whatnot. But that is it. As far as the channel goes, I don't have any videos in the pipeline right now, but I do have some ideas of some things I want to make. Probably talk to some of the co-hosts at some point and get back on and do some more discussion videos. I have about 10 million different topics that I want to talk about because, the world today is what it is, and it's not amazing. But until those come up, I will see you when I see you. Take care of yourself out there. This is a rough damn time, and you got to take care of yourself. And I guess all I can think to say is have a good drink. Have a good day.